The world's greatest geologist is on the verge of his next billion-dollar discovery. With looming shortages in copper, zinc, gold, and silver, this may be the best opportunity hard asset investors have ever faced. Learn more at futuremoneytrends.com/hardassets. Greetings and thank you for joining us at futuremoneytrends.com. I'm here with probably our favorite guest, without a doubt the most informed. Now, if you are a little bearish, you could be put over the edge by this interview. I'm just warning you. Andy Hoffman is a wealth of information. He's with Miles Franklin. If you're looking for an honest, good deal with bullion, these are the guys. They've been in business for a long time. And if you're listening to this interview and you found futuremoneytrends.com either from our site or a blog post, I'm betting you're like-minded with our thinking process and our analysis and acknowledgement of what's going on in the global economy. Well, that is exactly the way Miles Franklin views the world, and I would encourage you to also check out their blog. You'll get daily posts from experts on everything from news to inflation to bullion to even gold and silver and precious metals and stock manipulation. Andy Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, always a pleasure. And, yes, Miles Franklin, we've been around 26 years without an official complaint anywhere. And we actually did a podcast today to discuss the state of the bullion industry, which everyone should look at on our website. And as for putting people over the edge, it's really sad that my job is to tell the truth and that the truth is not pleasant. But, if one day it turns pleasant, I'll be happy to take people off that edge.
Well, thanks very much. We have a lot of news to cover. I mean, big stories have been happening in the last 24 hours. I first want to touch on the U.S. Mint suspending Silver Eagles. And then, you just came off this fresh conversation you said with Andy. Look, the silver to gold ratio is north of 70 now. This is ridiculous. And it's getting really hard to buy gold, Andy, when you can buy more than 70 ounces of silver right now for an ounce of gold. What are your thoughts?
Well, yes. I mean, look, the last 2 days have been, probably our two busiest days in a long time, and it's almost all silver, as you can imagine. People cleaning out the shelves. It's exactly what happened in 2008. It's exactly what happened in 2013 after the April 2013 paper raids. Premiums have jumped up, delivery times have shot out, and product is moving off the shelves for so many reasons. I mean, the biggest reason, of course, is because it's so ridiculously cheap compared to the price of production. I mean, pretty soon we're going to see most of the mining industry go under if prices don't turn around quickly. And of course, relative to the price of gold, it's cheap. And again, it says, they say poor man's gold. It's far more affordable, bang for your buck, if you're looking to just establish a position. So yes, it's, the demand is dramatic. We see the paper price go down every year, whereas 2013, we had record sales. 2014 shattered that record. And now we're on a pace, if the mint can find any silver, to shatter last year's record. And again, in 2008, when the whole industry ran out of silver for, 3 or 4 months, the U.S. Mint only sold 19 million ounces the whole year. We're on a pace to go over 46 million this year. And India's on a pace for record imports. And if China reported their numbers, that they would be record numbers because their gold numbers are record numbers. So again, we're talking about record demand around the world for both metals, certainly for silver. We're talking about the least amount of inventories relative to demand ever. I mean, even the COMEX, whose job is to lie to you and make you think that gold and silver prices need to stay down because they're in a glut, even they are showing record low inventories. In gold, they only have a couple 100,000 ounces sitting in the inventories there, maybe $1 billion worth tops. And of course, the supply, in my mind, gold supply has already peaked, probably permanently. And silver supply is right there. And frankly, now that the base metal prices are falling dramatically and the outlook for them is so bad, I would expect the drop-off in silver production to be far more dramatic than gold and frankly, almost any other commodity. So it's a perfect storm just from a supply-demand standpoint. And then when you talk about the actual fundamentals driving them, like the explosion of money printing and the collapse of currencies and geopolitical unrest and countries breaking apart from the euro and everywhere else. So again, I'm not sure what more people would need to see to make them realize it's the time to protect themselves, particularly when the mint itself is telling you we don't have any more silver.
Hopefully with supplies as tight as they are and real possible shortages happening here, I would hope that some of these mining CEOs would have the balls to either hold back the metal or just say, you know what, we're not selling it at 15. I'm selling it for 25. Come get it if you want it. You know what I mean?
Well, look, unfortunately, they don't have the option to do that, and no one knows more than you because you work with First Majestic, which is one of the best companies out there, run by one of the few CEOs that actually understands the concept that the prices are being manipulated. And he attempted to hold back production, but he obviously stopped doing it. And the reason, no fault to his or anyone else's, is you need to pay the bills in a business where your revenues are getting crushed. And, there are far larger companies than First Majestic out there that have far larger cost bases, and they all have, of course, they have offtake agreements, which can be very difficult to get out of. So, and the biggest part is you have a lot of CEOs that simply just don't want to rock the boat. They just like their cushy offices. They like their salary, and they don't want to cause any trouble. So, to the bitter end, most of them are just going to watch the ship go down. And that's why everyone needs to be extremely careful where they put their money, be it in, obviously, the safety of physical, or if you're going to go outside of the physical world, be very careful who you put your money with.
Yeah. Speaking of the outside the physical world, let's talk about Greece, because these people have been through hell in the past week and a half, 2 weeks. I mean, they've been in a crisis for some time, but not being able to access cash at the ATM. I'm sure you saw the picture of the gentleman who he looked like he was in his 70s, probably just trying to, pay his basic bills with his pension. He couldn't get access to his pension. What are your thoughts on Greece right now? Is this finally going to happen? Because we've been kicking this can down for years now. Is Greece going to leave the euro?
Oh, and by the way, they also can't get into their banks to get into their safety deposit boxes for all those people who still believe it's a smart idea to put gold and silver or anything of value into a safety deposit box. And look, I wrote 3 years ago, I can read the quote if I pull it out, I've said it enough times, that there's no doubt in my mind they're going to leave the euro, and it's a good chance it starts financial Armageddon in the end of the Western banking system. And here we are 5 years later, they're in 1,000 times worse situation than they were then, worse than I could have imagined. I mean, now they have the extra 250 billion euros of debt, but they also have record unemployment, collapsing GDP, everything you could possibly imagine that's bad. And now the people said themselves, hey, we don't even want the bailouts, which is why it's so comical that the next day that this guy goes to Europe and says, could we have a bailout? There's going to be no bailouts. And if there were somehow a bailout, it would not be good. It would not be considered good by anyone. Everyone would know that it's pure hyper monetary inflation that's going to come to bail out the next level of bailouts, and who's going to be next. And what was set in motion by this referendum is all the other periphery states that have been thinking the same thing are only going to step up their campaigns, like Catalonia, Spain, like Spain itself. Remember, we're only, I think, 5 months now from the presidential elections there, and the Alexis Tsipras of Spain, Pablo Iglesias, he's going to win, and he wants to do the same thing. And Marine Le Pen next year, or 2017, will do the same thing in France. She just said it this weekend. Beppe Grillo is going to do the same thing in Italy. He leads the majority party in parliament. And that's just the pigs. And they're not even the worst pig. Portugal is probably the first in line of all these guys because they're next worst after Greece. And it's not just them. It's everywhere around the world. You look at all of the currencies. The average currency since the U.S. in remember, we're in mid-2011. We have this crisis, first in Europe and then here, where the U.S. has its AAA rating stripped and the dollar's falling and gold is hitting an all-time high. And that's when they turn around and they, aside from this, deciding they're going to manipulate every market 24/7, that's when they started Operation Twist and QE3 and the inflation they exported as the reserve currency since that time has caused the average currency in the world to fall by 40% or more. And the average BRICS currency, remember, these are the big countries that are supposedly the growth engine of the world. The BRICS currencies, excluding the yuan, which is pegged to the dollar, are down 90% in the past 4 years. So we're talking about all-out carnage around the world, competitive devaluations, exploding cost of living. And of course, the deformations caused by 4 decades of money printing have caused massive oversupply of just about everything. So you have a higher cost of living at the same time you have deflation of all the commodities, which is the number one thing countries need for revenues around the world. It's their biggest business. So look, Greece is just starting, and Greece is not just starting for itself. It's starting a process that's going to end this fiat Ponzi scheme. And, will it happen tomorrow? Will it happen in 3 months? Will it take a year or two? Will somehow they be able to manipulate markets for another year? I don't know. But when you look at, the most important market, gold and silver, and you see that they're running out of silver and the miners are going out of business, I mean, how much longer can that last?
Yeah, that's a good point. I was a bit surprised actually by the weakness in the metals as far as their prices this week. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be, no one should be, because there really aren't any markets, as Chris Powell and you've mentioned daily. This is just manipulation. But luckily we may be finally at that point where they run out of the damn metals. The miners are going bankrupt, and you know what? It's just you can't manipulate something when the market forces just overtake it. So hopefully that happens very soon. With Greece falling apart, and then the euro ultimately it's going to be plagued with problems, as you just noted, over the next 2 years. I mean, to the point of just being completely broken.
And again, to follow the point of the physical versus paper, I mean, when I started my whole, let's call it, career in precious metals back in '02, from GATA, and their thing was always, it's the physical market that's going to defeat the paper. And when you talk about the Dow Jones propaganda average, or even the Shanghai exchange, where the government could not only print money but threaten to put you in jail if you sell stock, which is what they did last night to turn the market around. They can take the Dow up to 1 million. I mean, it'll be a hyperinflation million, so you'll lose money in real terms. But when it comes to physical markets, there's no doubt in my mind they've been trying to support the price of oil for the last few months, and look what's happening. That's failing because there's just too much oil in the world. And the same thing goes with gold and silver. I mean, the more that they've held it down, and in gold and silver's case, it's been 15 years now. The more that they've destroyed supply and increased demand around the world. So you're getting to the point where inventories are dropping off, and supplies are going to be dropping off, and demand's going up. So yes, it's physical markets that will overwhelm them. I really doubt it's going to be a paper market like Greek bonds or Spanish bonds. It's possible, but what's going to lead the charge is reality, as I call it, the unstoppable tsunami of reality. And perhaps it is gold and silver where that reality breaks. Or perhaps it's something much simpler, like the reality of the Greek people rioting and saying, we're not paying our debts. And, that could very well happen very soon.
You think the dollar rallies in the face of a crisis in Europe, or do you think there's going to be a contagion in our banks and that'll weaken the U.S. currency?
Well, again, I don't like the term strong dollar because it's meaningless when you talk about other fiat currencies. It's kind of like, I have an article from years back that said if a bomb destroyed Europe, yes, the dollar would go up. Is that good? I mean, who cares? If we're talking about toilet paper against toilet paper. And by the way, 2 years ago, not this year, 2 years ago, I said when we get back to the next crisis, the dollar is going to soar against everything, not because it's better, but because it's more liquid. That's why I said before, when the Fed does QE, they export inflation because the other currencies, the other countries can't keep up the money printing pace without destroying their currencies because they're less liquid. And the same thing happens during a crisis. People just buy the dollar because it's more liquid. So yes, it will go up against the euro, it'll go up against the yen, and it has. But that doesn't mean it's good. It means there's going to be more money printing everywhere, which is going to drive up the cost of living. And more importantly, the more this happens, the more dollar is going to lose its purchasing power against real things of value, starting with the real money that is gold and silver.
Andy, yesterday we had a kind of a circus on Wall Street where the NYSE was halted. But, it almost reminded me of the morning of 9/11 where they weren't sure what was going on with the first tower. If it was an accident or terrorism or whatever. Now, without getting into the whole 9/11 story, which I imagine we're both probably on the same line of thinking with that. But, look, U.S. Airlines has issues, technical glitch with the FAA. Wall Street Journal goes down, NYSE. I don't know. I know you follow the news closely and talk to a lot of people. It just doesn't seem like that was an isolated event. It seems like there was definitely something else more. They'll probably never tell us, but it does seem like it probably was an attack, don't you think?
Well, look, we're certainly on the same page now. Remember, I worked at Cantor Fitzgerald in the early to mid '90s on the 105th floor, and on 9/11, I was working 10 blocks away at Solomon. I saw that first plane, and we were all sitting there looking out the window at the building, all trying to figure out what it was, and assuming it was just a small plane crash by accident, like the one that hit the Empire State Building back in, 1970s. So yes, there is a lot of confusion out there, and the coincidence of the United Airlines and Wall Street Journal and the New York Stock Exchange, by the way, when China was crashing, and it's very convenient for that to slow it down. Not to mention Zero Hedge, and someone just emailed SGT report today. I mean, it can't be a coincidence that many major institutions are having website problems. But then again, I'm not going to speculate on it. Only to say it's interesting, and it certainly fits the pattern of increased chaos.
Yeah, it's funny. I have Drudge in front of me as I'm doing this interview, and I see at the top left, Anonymous issued a cryptic tweet on the eve of the NYSE suspension, basically saying, I wonder what's going to happen to the stock market tomorrow. But it is getting volatile out there. It definitely seems like, look, the Dow's gone up 6 years straight. The things that you have been concerned about, the things that I've been concerned about, the things that a lot of people in the alternative media, it seems like they're all coming to a boiling point. And I almost feel like this whole thing is like a pressure cooker. And when this thing cracks, it's just going to completely implode on itself. And it really causes concern, because I think a lot of people still out there are just out there kind of doing their normal retirement thing and maxing out their 401ks. Do you foresee, when this whole thing goes down, do you think it's going to be basically a shock to everyone? I mean, I don't know. Did you read on the ground for Greece when people showed up to the ATMs? I mean, was there anyone prepared in Greece, and will there be anyone prepared in the U.S.?
Well, I'm guessing there were people prepared in Greece because it's been going for so long. But as for the U.S., of course not. And there's people like in our world, and the one thing I don't agree with is I don't think everyone's just going about their business these days, because let's face it, even the government numbers show a 38-year low in retail, in labor participation and real wages, and everyone's got a part-time job now, and there's record debt and record low savings and record low home ownership rate and family formation and people living at home. So there's a small group of people that have plenty of money, and then there's other people who are simply used to living the lifestyle of borrowing money. But I think on average, people are living a lot more conservatively these days. And if it weren't for the power of the reserve currency, as I said before, and also the power of market manipulation, they too would be experiencing what probably most people in Europe are experiencing right now, and certainly the rest of the world, which has seen their economies collapse and their currencies collapse. But the higher up you're on the food chain, as far as the ability of your currency to absorb the inflation your central bank creates, the less likely you are to do something about it. And then, of course, there's human denial. I mean, it's the number one thing. You and I, we all watched what happened as everyone denied the stock bubble in 2000, as they denied the real estate bubble in 2007, as they deny what's going on today. It just doesn't serve most people to think this way. And again, we have half of America's on entitlements right now. I mean, half. And we have a record low savings rate. If you have no money to protect yourself by, say, buying gold, why would you want to believe the things that people like us are saying? So. Yeah. I think most people are not doing anything about it. In America, it's doubly scary because they've been kind of propagandized to believe that, there's everything fine. But around the world, people are getting nervous. And there's a reason why, by the way, why we do have record global demand for gold and silver.
Do you think when it just like the Arab Spring, or we've seen in other countries where they've had actual revolutions, America seems to be tearing apart at the seams. Do you think ultimately this is tied to the economy? This whole thing about where every time a white officer does anything to a black person, it's racism. There's a huge backlash and then a huge support for all this illegal immigration going on in our country. It just seems like Americans are not only divided, politically, but there's like an undertone where people are just mad and they're just looking for a reason to be upset. And right now the trend is everybody's racist.
Well, when it comes to what you're talking about with the social unrest, absolutely, it's a 100% social phenomenon. People are upset, and as a result, you have more incidents, and certainly the people who are the more racist are more likely to do racist things and draw this kind of upheaval. I mean, that's just simple stuff. When it comes to politics, though, the funny thing is I think people are less political than ever. I think maybe 5 years ago, or even less, there was some kind of hope out there. That's why you had such powerfully optimistic, or opinionated Republicans, how it's Obama and we can do it better. And, this. But I think at this point, I don't think anyone even cares anymore. I don't think even the staunchest Republicans really believe it matters. First of all, Republicans have had Congress now for a while. Hasn't mattered. And I don't think any of them truly believe that if Donald Trump or Jeb Bush is in office, it's going to make America better. I think people are giving up on the political system because it's given up on them and because it's really starting to look hopeless. The big money is starting to realize this. So, who's going to be in office next year? I don't know, Bush or Clinton, or who knows. But I think people, socially speaking, forgetting the political side, are as angry as they've ever been, and they're only going to get more angry.
Yeah, well, as you know, I'm a big Ron Paul supporter and anybody who backs that type of philosophy, but I have to admit, Trump winning for the pure entertainment value would at least I would at least look forward to checking in the news every day again.
That's really scary because he's such a belligerent jackass. And he clearly has had his handlers tell him, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be more belligerent and more nasty than ever, because we think that will actually sell to the American people.
Well, like I said, the entertainment value, So anyway, well, hey, if anyone wants to get a hold of Andy, check out milesfranklin.com. Get a great deal on bullion. They have a blog every single day. And by the time this interview is posted, if you go there, you will get an insider's discussion on what is going on with the state of the bullion market. So if you want to hear more about supply and demand and what's going on with other bullion dealers, competitors of Miles Franklin, that is an interview you're going to want to go and check out at milesfranklin.com. Andy Hoppin, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Daniel.